16th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And do the roll, please.
Commissioner Bemis,
Here.
Commissioner Gibson,
Here.
Commissioner Howard,
Here.
Commissioner Prickett,
Present.
Vice Chair Taylor,
Here.
and we have Alan Davis absent. We
Okay,
have a quorum.
perfect. I'll rise for the pledge of allegiance. Manny, you want to lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have any additions or corrections to the meeting?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Any conflicts of interest with any items tonight? No.
None.
No.
Okay. First item is a consent calendar. We have a discussion. Approval of minutes from April 18th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for April 18th, 2022 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any, no, sounds unanimous.
And then the written recommendation as well, or?
Yep, and then approval for written recommendations for code text amendments that we talked about. Thanks.
You want it just the way this is, Sean?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the written recommendations for code text amendment Title 11, Chapter 2, Sections 4 and 8 as presented.
Any discussion?
Oh, I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. I have to sign this now.
You don't have to now, but we can.
Okay.
in a minute.
So our first public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Mayor.
Before you get deeply into the other information going on in the meeting tonight, I know it's no surprise, Scott Purcell, I'm the newly appointed mayor. I've had a couple of pretty funny conversations with Alan Davis here in the last week or so. A lot to laugh about. One of the things that he said was that, he says, I've seen you in the back of the room forever. He said, I didn't know if I should say hello to you, or if you wanted to stab me in the back, or you didn't like this, or you did like this, or he said, I didn't know. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, that's a fair statement. My wife and I just sat in the back here. The reason we were sitting in the back, let me bring you up to speed, is that we were concerned when that zoning letter went out, and we said, we need to find out how planning and zoning works and how the city council works before we can really get involved in any of this. So that was why we've been sitting in the back, and of course when things have come up that affect us, I did have something to say about that. But I just wanted you to know that that's the way the situation was. Of all of the commissions that our city has, I think it's fair to say that you guys probably face the toughest questions. Several months back, Commissioner Prickett said, I remember you sitting there in Ms. Howard's chair there, and he said, geez, this just isn't fun anymore. And it's true. You guys are faced with some really difficult choices. Many people think that you're paid big bucks to sit up here. I know that's not the case. I don't pay big bucks either, but anyway. For being concerned citizens, being willing to sit up here and understand the workings of planning and zoning, and being willing to make the choices that you guys do, on behalf of all the citizens of Hayden, thank you very much. I know it's a really tough job. Because you're in the middle of the meeting here, if you have any questions, or if there's anything that I can do to make life a little easier for you guys, please, by all means, just let me know. Thanks very much, and then I'm going to get out of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Welcome, Mayor.
Okay, where am I at here? We'll now have a public hearing on PZE-22-0036, the Gregory variance. Zach?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Planner Zach Trevino for the record, and I'm presenting a variance request. I'll do a brief introduction, and the applicant's here, and they'll do a presentation, and then I'll follow up by going into some greater detail about standards of approval and things like that. Just to give a little background, this variance relates to fence and wall standards of our code. Our code sets forth general standards of development for various aspects of site development, and this has to do with wall standards. The applicant wants to put up a wall on their property in the front yard. Just giving some background, and then I'll show an aerial image of the property. So in 1988, this will become important, a sewer line easement was granted to the city partially on this property. And the reason that's important is because that sewer line easement is located partially where the wall would be located. So that'll come up later, but I just wanted to preface this by that. In 2012, there was a single family residence constructed on the property. Permits were issued, and since then, not much has changed. And then in October of last year, the current owner acquired the property, and then in April submitted an application for a variance to allow a 6-foot tall wall to be constructed along the front property line. The reason the variance is necessary is because our wall standards limit the height of a wall in the front yard to 4 feet. They want a 6-foot wall, and they'll explain why they want that. But just that's the background to where we are today with this variance application. The parcel is a little over an acre, and it has a dwelling unit on it, as mentioned. That dwelling unit gains access from 4th Street. 4th Street's a minor arterial, and this is an aerial image of the property. You'll see a few, but this gives you an idea of what the wall would look like. This is an image provided, not of the wall, hasn't gone up yet, but of the type of wall that the contractor would install on the property should the variance be granted. It's a precast concrete wall, and it does have foundations. It would require a building permit, and they would like for it to go on or along the property line here from this south corner, southwest, following the property line. And then they also want a gate across the driveway to restrict access. Again, they'll explain a little more. A few things to note right off the bat. This right-of-way for 4th Street is 80 feet wide. So the road surface is quite some distance from the actual property line. This is pretty accurate as far as that green line representing the front property line. The sewer line easement that I mentioned is an abandoned sewer line that runs from the intersection of 4th and Honeysuckle to a point southwest of this property. I could pull up a record drawing later on if need be, but that's just generally the course of the sewer line easement. And I'll go into the standards of approval for a variance and other aspects of this proposal, but that should give you enough background. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicants here. And if you have a question.
How long has it been abandoned?
So that's a good question. It hasn't been in use for years. Since 1988 till now, I don't know at what point it stopped being used. I can say that in identifying the sewer line, some of the guys from Public Works went out into the field and found the manhole that the sewer line easement references as a point of reference. And that it was overgrown and took a little bit of searching to find. So it definitely has been out of use for some time. What year it stopped being used, that I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any future plan to reuse that?
No. And that is actually one of the recommended conditions that I'll explain a little later is what would need to happen with that. In short, that easement would need to be vacated across this property in order for something to be built in it. But there are no plans to use that sewer line again.
So even though there's not current plans to use that sewer line, that sewer easement again, with the growth that we have experienced, is there any possibility that its proximity might be useful to use it, activate it again?
That's a very good question. So there would have to be a discussion about that very issue as part of the vacation process. It would involve public hearing.
Okay.
I can say that in order to account for future easements, it's important to note when improvements are spurred by some development on this property along 4th Street. As you may be familiar with, certain types of development require that an applicant develop frontage improvements along a street, whether it's sidewalk, swale, curb and gutter, that sort of thing. This construction would not itself spur those improvements, but whenever those are spurred, the engineer assesses whether additional right-of-way needs to be dedicated. And with that, there's an adjacent utility drainage, snow storage, and road easement that is granted. And the purpose of that is to accommodate any future infrastructure along that roadway. So it would be important during the vacation process, if that is pursued, to discuss future needs and what that might look like. However, the engineer and Public Works did review this request in preparation for this hearing. They went over the staff report, and they do not have a plan to use this particular sewer line or the easement as it has been used. But that doesn't mean that the vacation is a sure thing. I can't comment on what would happen with that. There would be a public hearing to discuss that. Does that help? Mm-hmm.
So today, as it stands, a 4-foot wall could be put up.
Yes, as long as it still adheres to other requirements. So a 4-foot wall could not be in the easement. That easement would still need to be vacated. A 4-foot wall could be placed in a front yard of a residential zone without a variance, as long as it met, placement standards, didn't interfere with utility infrastructure of either the city or another agency, et cetera.
So we're looking for a variance, not just for 4 to 6 foot, but also for the wall itself because of the easement encroachment.
Well, good question. The variance wouldn't be to allow encroachment into an easement. And I definitely will go over this a little later. But one of the things that would have to happen is if the variance were granted, a next step would be for the applicant to apply for a vacation of the portion of the easement that's across their property, so that we can ensure that a wall is not placed in an easement that's still granted to the city. And
It's like the variance is conditioned upon another process, because vacations of right-of-way are done through the city council and variances are done through planning and zoning. So before you go to a vacation of easement, first you have to figure out if you can get the variance for the wall, which is why we're here tonight. And if you decide that it meets the requirements or the standards of approval, and you grant that variance, then one of those conditions that staff has placed in as a recommended condition is that you recommend your approval of, should you choose to approve it, your approval contingent upon them receipt of the the vacation of the right-of-way, or they would have to place the wall outside of the easement, should it be approved. Lots of ifs and shoulds.
So if they were just going to do a 4-foot wall, they would just have to go before the council for the vacation of the sewer easement.
If they were going to place it.
So the only thing we're really looking at is from 4 to 6 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Good questions.
That's a good question, good clarification. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant so they can describe what led to this request, why they believe it's necessary, and then I'll go over the standards of approval. It was brought up, and it's a good idea, to give a sense of reference as far as height for anybody that might be watching or you all, to just measure this as kind of a point of reference. So the height of this is 45.5 inches, so not quite 4 feet from the ground on this side, just as a point of reference when we're discussing height. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant.
Real quick, Zach, you said that there's an 80-foot right-of-way. How far does that 80 feet go in? Does it really just go end at the property line there?
Yes, by definition, the right-of-way itself would be off of the property. It's the area where the road is, and that's public right-of-way that the city maintains. And then that right-of-way edge corresponds with the property line.
And where exactly is the easement part? Could they actually build a 4-foot fence without going into the easement?
Not based on the location of the manhole. Actually, since we're talking about it, let me go to the end here and pull up what we found. So, not me. The engineer did some background research on the sewer line, And this is a record drawing. It's quite old, probably from around the time that the easement was granted in 1988. And it depicts the location of the line. This is light drawing, but it mentions the sewer line. This is the intersection of 4th and Honeysuckle, currently undergoing construction for the roundabout. The subject property is approximately in this location. So you see this terminus right here corresponds with a manhole that was identified in the field. It does exist a little bit southwest of the subject property. Then the sewer line comes across, and at some point, it becomes, it kind of goes into the right of way and is running adjacent to the actual 4th Street surface up here, according to this record drawing. Where that is on the property would have to be marked to determine its precise location. But that's what we know about the sewer line that's subject of the easement.
That has since been vacated and another sewer line put into 4th Street.
So where is the other sewer line?
In the
In
center,
relation to that?
in the center of the roadway instead of along the edge of the roadway.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so there is another sewer line in that same general area that it is now being used,
That replaced this one.
that replaced this one?
Correct.
Okay, that is there for future growth.
Well, being used, yes.
Could that accommodate future growth? I'm looking at the vacant property, the open property next to it.
Right. If that were to be sewered, it could get sewer off of Honeysuckle or off of 4th Street, either one. There's sewer in both
There
locations.
really is no need or purpose at this point for this sewer line that we want to abandon. That we want to.
According to what is in the staff review, the staff review acknowledges all the direction that we've received from Public Works and from engineering.
Okay, thank you.
I can say that, if a vacation request were to actually come forward, there would be an analysis devoted specifically to the issue of this sewer line. A lot of background work was done as far as, searching for documents, looking in the field to find the manhole and that sort of thing. But an analysis of the consequences of the vacation beyond the sense that it's not needed wasn't done. That would occur if a vacation were to happen, and as mentioned, the city council would be the final decision maker on whether or not the easement was deemed unnecessary. So that's kind of a next step. Why don't I turn it over to the applicant, and then we can definitely go over this in greater detail, and I'll answer questions at the end there.
Okay, before the applicant comes up, anybody had any ex parte communication regarding this case? No. Okay. I'll have the applicant come up.
I'm here.
Oh, yes, and please state your name and your address.
I don't know if I'm more nervous talking in front of y'all or talking in front of my family, because they're my biggest critics. Anyway, give you a little background. Myself and my wife Carol, our family moved to Coeur d'Alene about 4 years ago, and we joined them last November.
Sir, just real quick for the record, can you state your name and your address?
Jack Gregory.
And your address?
Pardon me?
And your address?
Yeah, 8600 North 4th Street in Hayden.
Thank you.
And so anyway, we looked for a place where we could have 3 generations living together, because we get along sometimes. And so they found this house on 4th Street. And tell you the truth, I was kind of opposed to it because I didn't know this street was going to be kind of, real busy street. But I've learned to love the place and the family get together and everything. But what I found out about this property is, unbeknownst to us, is we received all the documents from the title company, and then enclosed was this property has a lot of history. And I have a couple of copies of the permits that were issued back 2009 and reissued in 2011. And it shows a plot plan, and it shows that this area here, in the plot plan, it shows all this area right in here is landscape in the application to build the house. And it showed right along here a wall. And So I looked at that and, boy, I thought that, you know, it was nice because that house presents itself nice, and little did I know, everybody in North Idaho knows that house. So anyway, it becomes, what's happened is, as we've lived there, we've discovered a number of problems, that everybody does know the house, and a lot of people think it's their house. So we have a lot of people parking in, well, let me backtrack a minute. See, I told you I was nervous in front of you guys. I asked them not to come. But anyway, all that area was landscaped by the previous owner. All the way up to where there's parking, right here, there's gravel right along here. So it's nice and wide. And a little historic, I understand, I've done some research, that this road was from an old railroad track. And what they did is when they developed the road a little bit offset, a little bit to the west. So consequently, we have this big unimproved area. And the previous owners improved it. They've been maintaining it. There's big, beautiful trees there. There's sprinklers there. There's shrubs there. And it's really nice. And so we assumed that was part of our, you know, part of our plan. And then after a few months living there, everybody else figures that house is their house too. We have all kinds of hours in the morning, in the afternoon. Yesterday, my son-in-law called me. There's some guy out there in front. Anyway, they park right in here. It's all improved. And they're drinking, they're doing whatever, you know, whatever they do at 4 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. Then a couple of weeks ago, my oldest grandson, who's 27 years old, working, and he lives with us, a couple that was inebriated pulled in here and started walking out around the house. And my grandson's not bashful. He armed himself and went out there and chased them off. And so security is a big problem that we're concerned with. And so that goes back to our perception of the place. And perception sometimes, you know, leads you up the wrong trail. And so anyway, when we decided, man, we need something up, we need to secure the property. And so we wanted to build a fence, and then it came to my attention we couldn't build anything but a 4-foot fence on the property line. And Zach had been very helpful for us and kind of guiding us through the process. And so then we discovered we have to build we can't build a 6-foot fence. And so we're going through this process, and we're working through it, and we get this easement. We find out about this old easement. Well, we contacted the people that, the sewer people and everything. This is old abandoned sewer that was capable of handling all this other stuff that went on further north and east. And so, and up the hill. And so they told me that was abandoned years ago, and so now it's my understanding that we have to abandon it. We have to pay the fees to vacate it so we can build our fence on our property line. And our property line, as we find out, where our sidewalk is here, boy, am I nervous. Our sidewalk here is only 25 feet from that property line, and the house is 35 feet. And our intent is to maintain the integrity of the entrance into Hayden. We're going to build like a $60,000 wall that's going to just be nothing but to add to the attractiveness, which that house already does, and which the landscaping that's out in front does, as long as we maintain it. And then you're putting in that roundabout, which is just another and further enhancement. And I've seen pictures of it with the trees and everything that's going on. And I just think our wall is just going to add to the area. Now they say it's not conforming with the ordinance. Well, I'll tell you, from from Prairie to Honeysuckle, you got a 6-foot fence all the way along here, okay? And they're talking about, well, if they're gonna widen, if you're gonna widen 4th Street, okay, right here, right south of our property is a retaining wall that's like about 10 feet from the current road, and it's holding back the wall. So I don't see where our fence is non-conforming, because from Prairie to Honeysuckle, we're it. I mean, we're it. And if we, you know, we're the only house there, so we're not non-conforming with. And the other fact about the safety aspect, you know, I'm a newbie here, and most of the neighborhoods, we drove around Hayden for 2 years looking for houses. And most of the neighborhoods that are zoned R1 are 25 miles per hour. Okay, our road's 35 miles per hour. Okay, and that is if you're lucky, if they obey that. Because they zoom through there. Matter of fact, there was a sign right here that had a speed limit. Okay, it was knocked down about 30 days ago. It was knocked down from somebody coming from this direction that lost control of their car. And since the road has been closed, since you started on the roundabout, the other night we had drag racers up there racing around the corner. Then 3 nights ago we had guys practicing wheelies like you see on commercials. So anyway, that we'd appreciate it if, you know, oh boy, you know, we just, yeah, the speed limit, and those guys, they gun it there, and that wall is going to keep it a little bit more quiet for us, and it's going to be a little bit more private. And I think we'd be a great asset to your community. I'm in the process of moving my business here. I'm an old timer, but I still enjoy working and pay a lot of taxes. And I just, you mind, let me just check and see if there's something I left out. And then you ask yeah, that if you're familiar with CDA precast, it's a beautiful wall. And, but I was told that they can't get it painted until, it'll be just gray, but they'll paint it. They're having guys, I guess the company's based out of Salt Lake, and they'll come in and they'll stain the wall and make it to the colors that in our application. And another thing, I guess in closing, we just ask for your special consideration for expediency, because the road's closed, and those trucks coming in and moving the wall and all that stuff that it takes, I understand that I have to pay to close to obstruct the road for an hour at a time or whatever it is, and I don't know what that cost is, but it would sure be great if we could complete that wall by the time that the roundabout is done. And so we're going to build, a wall there, whether it's 4 foot or 6 foot. And as I drive around the neighborhood, and a lot of the areas around Coeur d'Alene and Hayden and right across the street from us, they seem, for privacy, they grow these big evergreen things close to one another, and they get 20, 30 feet tall to get their privacy. Well, the Gregory's and the Avilas, we don't want to do that. We want to build a nice looking wall, maintain that for the city outside, and just be good neighbors. And I think I said enough. Too much. And then, oh, by the way, my family, my daughter and son-in-law, a retired sheriff, which would be proud to move to Hayden, John Avila and family, and 2 grandsons. And one last thing is on that easement, for what I understood on that easement, that it has been abandoned, but I guess we have to go through the vacated process. So if we can, if approved, if we could do that more quickly, is the word, so we could do the work during the shutdown time for that road. If you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, would you like to speak as well?
Yeah, please, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I'll be really fast. My name is John Avila, A-V-I-L-A. We own
Same
the...
address?
8600 4th Street. We own the property, so we're multi-generational. And I moved there since November. We're getting along great. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful property. It may not fit everybody because it is unique, but it fits us to a T. Now, we moved here, my wife and I and our kids moved here about 4 years ago, just a sea state south of the border, but we didn't bring it with us. We're here, we're in Coeur d'Alene, we're in Hayden, we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere, our family's not going anywhere. So I look at the wall as a safety issue because I was an undercover narcotic officer for 30 years. And to me, it's all about safety. So that's why I had Zach measure that, the 4 foot. So if we're looking at a 4 foot wall, basically it's about to here. And I look at deterrence. That's not going to deter anybody. And as a matter of fact, the other day, a nice lady pulled up in the driveway. I was working in the garage, pulls up right in our driveway, rolls down the window, so I went and contacted her to see what, if I could help her. And she says, "Oh, I'm so happy that people are living here now." She said, "I watched this house as the construction started, as it grew." She goes, "It's just amazing." She said, "And I've always wondered what it would look like, so I wanted to drive over here to see if you could take me inside." Needless to say, she didn't get the tour. And I was super nice to her. She was a nice lady, but those are some of the issues that we're confronting. The other day, a couple pulled up. The guy gets out of his car, he lights a cigarette, he throws his Marlboro pack into one of our bushes. Things like that won't happen. They'll happen on a 4 foot, but they absolutely, I don't think, would happen on a 6 foot. On a 4 foot, I'm old, I can jump over it. But when you get a 6 foot wall up there, it's a little more of a deterrent. Another thing I want to do is I want to thank you for the roundabout. I looked at the plans. It looks absolutely amazing. And that's what Jack was saying, that's one of the things we want to do. We live here, we're going to stay here. We want this wall to be aesthetically pleasing as much as the roundabout is. We want to work with the city and show that, hey, we're just not going to put up this wall and we're going to live in privacy. No, we want to be part of the city. That's why Jack picked out this wall and how amazing it looks. So I really think that it's in the best interest of both ourselves and the city of Hayden to have this wall. And we can get it done very quick. I know the roundabout is supposed to be finished about the 4th of July is kind of the estimate. We would love to have, we would love to have this wall up, the gate up and everything way before that. And then one more quick thing about the sewer, and Zach might be able to answer. Do we know for a fact that the sewer, the abandoned sewer line runs through our property? Or do we know exactly where it is?
Yeah, so I can address
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
One question.
Yeah.
Are you going to do anything on the side yards as well? Are you going to continue the wall on the side yards or?
Yeah, what's going to happen? Jack, you want to take that because you've been working with the builder.
Yeah, what we're gonna do, there's a fire hydrant. Part of the conditional permit when they built the house was that evidently they were applying for a bed and breakfast. And so they put a fire hydrant right here. And our design for the wall, we've had the guys out, is we're gonna come back and have, I talked to the fire chief and he said it has to be seen from the road. So instead of having an open access or a gate or something, so we're just gonna, we're going to put a couple more panels. It'll be an additional 26 feet. And so the fire hydrant's outside the wall. So what will happen, this has changed a little bit since we gave Zach the amendments. It's going to come here, and then here, and then we'll have a gate. And, yeah, that's, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions of me?
Thank you.
No, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I will start by addressing that question. The way the sewer line easement was identified was based on the title report that was submitted. That's a required element of an application like this, specifically so we can review it and see if there's any easements or other encumbrances that are eye-catching, and maybe we want to know more about what that really means. And it identified the sewer line easement granted in 1988 to the city of Hayden. The fact that it's on the title report indicates that a portion of it does cross this property, that a portion of it encumbers this property. As I mentioned earlier, we don't know the exact boundaries. I can't draw on this map where those boundaries may be. However, based on that record drawing that I had pulled up, it does appear that there is a portion of the sewer line that crosses this property. That would have to be located if the easement was to be requested, if the request for vacation came forward, then it would be for the portion, presumably, of this easement that crosses this property. And that would be evaluated at that time. But if the vacation is not requested, then before a wall were to be constructed, the line would need to be located. And that would need to be shown on a site plan, building permit application, so that it's clear that a wall or any structure is outside of that easement.
Zach, what is the price to vacate?
That's a good question. I
Going
believe
to Mr. Gregory.
So a vacation fee is a base fee of $1,000 plus the cost of notification and mailings for the application. And that is our current fee schedule. And
When you say base, it could be more than that?
base fee as in that's the fee that they pay. It's non-refundable regardless of outcome.
And then mailings and,
The mailings and the notifications are variable, so they would actually submit a $500 deposit. We would hold that. We'd subtract from that the variable fees. And at the end, any remaining item or any remaining amount would be refunded. So that would be the cost currently for a vacation application.
In this case, the radius report they already did, that we already have, so they don't have to do it again. And they've already deposited money for public notification, so they wouldn't have to do that again. We just deduct from that. So it's just the $1,000 fee for the vacation processing.
And I want to go over in detail the standards of approval, because these standards are what the codes say need to be met in order for the Planning and Zoning Commission to grant a variance. The first one, making sure that special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same district. The applicant explained a little bit about the uniqueness of the property and the issues that they are facing as described in their narrative. It's important to note that this is in the single-family residential zone, as are the properties in the surrounding area. Zoning is, I would say, only relevant in so much as it establishes the setbacks, and it also establishes the fact that it's a residential zone, so that 4-foot limitation on walls applies. Otherwise, no change to the zoning is requested. Our transportation plan does designate 4th Street as a minor arterial, as opposed to like a local street where you'd find most residences fronting. Just for context, you probably are all familiar with this area, but it's adjacent to Lock Haven Hills in the southeast, and then across 4th Street is Woodland Meadows. Both plan unit developments, they're subject to their own development standards. None of those residences access off 4th Street. They're accessed from local roads. And then the parcel to the northeast is in unincorporated Kootenai County. The city limit of Hayden corresponds with the property's northeast property line. The second standard of approval is related to, will application of the code standards deprive the applicant of rights that are enjoyed by other properties? So in bold here at the bottom is the actual text of the wall standards. For residential uses in all zoning districts, fences, walls, and hedges not greater than 4 feet in height shall be permitted in any required front yard. So that's where the 4-foot limitation comes from. They've explained why they believe this is met. And 3, that there are not conditions that have resulted from actions of the applicant. So if this is clearly a self-created issue, that's what this standard is related to, determining whether there are special conditions that the property is subject to, kind of going back to standard 1, or is it self-imposed? That's what this gets at, and they've explained the situation and the purpose of the wall and gate that they're proposing. The final standard of approval that is listed in the code is that it wouldn't create a special privilege. And I want to address a couple of things here based on feedback that we received from agencies and as well as the Public Works and Engineering departments. So the proposed gate, that is proposed to cross the driveway to restrict access as described. However, in order to ensure that there's not a creation of any sort of congestion issue along 4th Street, let's say, you know, someone turns in with a trailer meant to access the property and they're waiting for the gate to open. We want to make sure that there's enough room for them to pull completely off the road so that the trailer, for example, is not hanging out on 4th Street. That's just an example of why the gate must be at least 26 feet from the property line according to Public Works. So that was feedback that they looked at this right-of-way in this location and determined that would need to occur. So that's one standard for placement of the gate. The wall itself, as we've gone over, can be placed in the sewer line easement. A site triangle, what that is whenever you're placing something at the corner of either an intersection or an approach, it's important that you're not obstructing vision. So if someone is pulling out and turning left or right, they can see traffic. In this case, the property line is set already significantly back from the actual road. So if you're waiting to turn out, you're probably waiting in the right of way here. But that's what that site triangle means, is just making sure you're not obstructing views. And then finally, the other infrastructure mentioned, there is a fire hydrant. I'll show you in the image real quick in a minute where that is. And then a water line has been identified on the northeast property line. I'll show you that as well. So those are the 4 standards. The 5th standard that's included here is actually derived from the purpose of a variance as explained in the code. A variance shall not be granted on the grounds of convenience or profit, but only where strict application of the provisions of this title would result in unnecessary hardship. Unnecessary hardship, that's kind of the universal key word. You'll find that in basically every land use code when discussing variance. And so that's for you to decide whether there is unnecessary hardship and whether these standards are met using the information provided by the applicant, staff's analysis, agency and public testimony, of which I'll summarize in a minute. And that's the materials you have, as well as asking any questions. So we've gone over some infrastructure. Some of this may be a bit redundant, but as we go into the agency comment, it's important to realize that the city is the sewer provider. There's also a water provider. In this case, it's North Kootenai Water and Sewer District. We reached out to them and they did provide a diagram I'll show in a minute. Because there is a need whenever you have development to grant an easement adjacent to the right-of-way, it was identified in the engineer's review of this application that the wall needs to be located such that it wouldn't impede a roadway drainage utility or snow storage easement adjacent to that right-of-way, which doesn't exist today, but would be triggered if certain construction activities took place. So for example, accessory dwelling unit, when that's constructed, you need to grant that easement. Other development that would probably be less likely to occur given that there's a single family residence already could trigger that, but maybe that's an example of one that could reasonably be expected to occur at some point, but may or may not. So just important to keep in mind that the location needs to account for that. So we did reach out to 16 agencies, let them know what the request was, included the diagram showing where the wall would go. Really no issues from most agencies. There are 2 worth going into. The North Kootenai Water and Sewer District actually responded today. And the reason that we reached out to them initially was because this is the water district that serves this property. But the reason we wanted to follow up with them was because Northern Lakes Fire Protection District stated in their comment, and this is in the staff report, that the fire hydrant, which is adjacent to the driveway, needs clearance. And also if there were any construction that would affect the water line, North Kootenai Water and Sewer District should provide input and comment. So they didn't comment initially. So we reached out to them and said, hey, just to let you know, this is the proposal. Do you have any issues with this? Do you have anything to say? They did respond today with a useful map where there's a 12-inch transmission main and water line easement near the north property line. That was already identified by the applicant. They provided on their site plan a location of that easement. The water district provided this map today in email, and so I'm displaying that because it was not included in your staff report or the memo with public comments. This is from their GIS and Geographic Information System, and the orange line is where their GIS shows the water line. They would need to see building plans before they determine that the wall would or would not actually impede that water line. But just as something to keep in mind that would have to be addressed at building, that's where the water line is approximately according to the water district. And this here, if you could see my mouse, is the fire hydrant, which I'll show you in the image. Otherwise, there were no concerns provided beyond just making sure that utility access is preserved. 38 people were mailed notices and 2 responded in support. No opposition was received from the public. This is just another image. It's important to note topographically, and this was mentioned by the applicant, there's a retaining wall down here because there is a slope on the east side of 4th Street. We're looking basically southeast where we're facing now. And access is gained off of 4th Street. It would not be possible to gain access anywhere from up here. So that's where the configuration resulting from topography is, as you see it today. And this is the frontage, relatively recent image pulled from Google Maps of the parcel. So this is the fire hydrant, and that needs to be accessible. As the applicant already explained, they don't plan on obstructing that. The gate would have to be somewhere back here because the property line is approximately maybe here, just based, if you recall, on that aerial image. Yes?
Can I direct a question to Mr. Gregory about the wall in the picture? The wall on the north side of the property there, do you know the height of that?
That's a 6-foot vinyl fence.
Okay, and then can I ask you one more question real quick? The property to the north of this property, so there's a 6-foot wall all the way along the other side of the street, which is conforming because it's their backyard. Mm-hmm. So hypothetically speaking, if these guys moved their front door to the backyard, just saying.
It's a good question.
They could put a 6-foot wall there and nobody would care.
So that's a very good question. And
if the property to the north of them mm-hmm. puts in 80 houses or whatever it is that they're trying to do, mm-hmm. they will put their backyards along 4th Street and have a 6-foot wall also. Correct?
Good question.
Most likely.
So the first one, access and where the property is oriented as far as vehicular access, that determines the front. So if the front door were moved to the east side of the house, 4th Street would still be considered the front for purposes of setbacks.
Gotcha.
That would only change if there were, a road back here where the applicant gained access from.
Gotcha.
It is absolutely true that there is able to be a 6-foot fence along 4th Street for these properties here because that is their rear yard.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so that would be a distinct situation as far as what can be done. As far as this property, they are not actually currently subject to these wall standards because they are outside of the city. If they were to annex, which is a process in and of itself, would have to be approved through the public hearing process. But if they were, then they would be subject to these standards. And if they decided to subdivide, which again is its own process, and they were to have housing that abutted 4th Street with the rear yards, you could put a wall 6 feet tall, as long as, again, you're not impeding site triangle and it didn't interfere with any sort of easement or other infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make one comment?
You can actually rebut. There is going to be a chance for you to speak after I present, and you'll be able to kind of say anything you'd like, and that'll be important because it gives you a chance to address if there's something that I mess up about the proposal.
All right, thanks.
Yep. And so this gives you an idea of what it looks like today with the landscaping, et cetera. And as you see, the frontage improvements don't include any sort of sidewalk today, so that's kind of what the engineer and the public works were looking at, making sure that could all be accommodated in the future. So I want to end up pretty quickly here by going through the conditions that are recommended in the staff report. And these are mitigating conditions. Variances usually come with conditions. These two are pretty general and standard, noting that the applicant's materials establish the request, and there will be a need for a building permit. They'll have to provide a site plan as part of that. Given that there have been some changes, minor changes in what the plan is, you heard him say that, you know, going around the fire hydrant, that sort of thing. That building permit plan would be what is determining what, you know, where the wall would go, and we would review that as part of our standard building permit application. The second one is important because it notes that a variance runs with the land. So if they sold for whatever reason, if you granted the variance, it would be applicable to a future owner. That's what that is. These conditions were derived from input from planning, engineering, and public works. The first one here is noting that the gate needs to be sufficiently set back from that property line to prevent congestion for obvious reasons. The next condition is to ensure that the access management standards are adhered to. And this is really the basis for that requirement of moving the gate back. We have an access management policy. It's online, and it's used whenever we're reviewing access to a site. And it specifically mentions avoiding traffic backup on public right-of-ways, as well as placing gates across approaches. So it specifically addresses that, and just as a condition, it's recommended that that's referenced. Finally, again, the proposed wall is 6 feet tall, and our code does say that, let me go to it, all fences and walls greater than 6 feet in height shall conform to the currently adopted building code. This is a wall that has foundations as part of it. It's pretty hefty. They provided some very helpful diagrams from the company. And we talked to our building division, and it would be important for structural integrity, wind loads, to make sure that it's evaluated. So this would require a building permit application if this is approved, if the vacation process went through. And that's what this last condition gets to, is related to construction, is vacating that easement. So it just references that easement. This is important because we want to make sure that there isn't a surprise down the road. As mentioned, future development could trigger additional frontage improvements, additional easement dedication along 4th Street. So it's important that when they're locating the wall, it's placed in a location that is viable for the future, even upon dedication of future easement. So that's what this condition gets to. I'm not reading these conditions because they were included in your staff report, but let me know if you have any questions. And then finally, infrastructure. Going off of Northern Lakes Fire Protection District, they responded directly and mentioned the importance of access to utility and fire infrastructure. And then today we received that comment from North Kootenai Water and Sewer District. It's important that you can't construct a wall in a way that would impede infrastructure. And that would go for any wall, regardless of whether it's 6 feet and requires a variance or whether it's of right. So again, these are the standards of approval. I'll pull these up during your deliberations. It's important to note, just because variances aren't the most common application, that the Planning and Zoning Commission is the decision-making body in this case. This will not go to council as part of the normal process. So you are tonight in a position to either approve with conditions, or deny the variance request. And I stand for any questions that you have.
You've done a very good job. Thank you. All my questions have been answered by your presentation. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Zach? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to the public testimony, which I don't believe we have any. Is that correct?
We do not have any.
Okay. Do I just need to write that, or still I need to read the
Rebuttals.
I don't think there's nothing to rebut, though, because there's been no public comment.
Yeah, I guess there is nothing except for,
Anything you would like to add, sir?
Oh, yeah, I'd just like to make one comment is,
Could you approach the podium, though, so I can enter it in the record?
They can rebut because you were up.
Jack Gregory, 8600 North 4th Street. Yeah, one other comment too is driving around the neighborhood and everything, I noticed at the end, as you go to the to Hayden Lake, Pardon me? No, Hayden Lake. And as you drive to Hayden Lake where they boat launch and all that, it looks like in recent years they developed some homes right along there. I know Hayden Lake is a separate community from Hayden, but they have a 6-foot wall in front of their place. They built there for privacy, I assume. And so it isn't that it's hadn't been done before. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
Okay. So we did receive written testimony that was in our packet to approve. So I think all we're at now is, does anyone have any further questions? No? Any discussion or motion?
Close the public hearing.
So the hearing is now closed. No more questions or comments to be allowed from the public. And so do we want to proceed? Yeah. Anybody have any comments?
I move that we approve PZE-22-0036 Gregory variance
With staff conditions.
without conditions.
With no conditions, none of the
Yeah.
staff conditions?
Well,
The staff had some conditions.
where there this?
Go put your
Can you
conditions
give
up.
those conditions
Yeah.
again?
They had 8
Absolutely.
recommended conditions of approval? Is that
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, with those, yeah. I'm sorry.
Kara's like-
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, with the conditions that you just went over, Zach.
I'll stand here just in case your
Yeah,
deliberations
yeah.
require me to
Absolutely,
Maybe step us through.
these conditions.
yes, absolutely, sorry.
So your motion's with the recommended
With the recommended
staff
conditions.
condition? Okay.
Yeah, I'll second that.
I'm still kind of nervous when I'm giving recommendations.
The roll call
Or
or
motions.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? We'd like to vote.
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay.
Okay, council. They're not making findings. Or Commissioner,
Hey, wait, time out. Can you just tell us why? Could you tell us how those 4 standards are going to get met?
Oh.
Because I'm trying to figure out how to write it.
We have to put the findings. There have to be
Okay, I
findings.
gotta think over
This is
again.
important because if someone appealed this,
Yeah.
we would be presenting a document and it would explain why you drew the conclusion that you drew.
So should we have a little bit of discussion to come up with those reasons?
That would be very helpful
That'd be perfect.
for everyone.
All right.
Awesome.
So back it up.
And you can do
so-
it right now during your discussion with your motion and second, so it's fine.
Okay. Honestly, the way that I'm looking at it is we have an abandoned easement as it is. So assuming that it gets vacated on the next step, we could give conditions of approval that it does get vacated to the city council.
Well, they actually just do the vacation. We're only doing, all we're doing here is we're allowing them to build a 6-foot wall.
But couldn't we also give the
Recommend.
recommendation of approval of the vacation and,
It's in the recommended conditions from
okay.
staff.
So I mean, looking through it, I'm having a hard time understanding why we wouldn't do it, I guess.
I think there's some special circumstances here
Yeah,
that are unique to the property. The fact that it's on a minor arterial. It is somewhat of a well-known property that people do try and check it out. You know, they know the history of it as a bed and breakfast. I think those are 2 of the items there.
I feel like it meets the standards of approval, and to be honest, when I first read it, I was like, not just yeah, heck yeah, because I would want that. But then it was like, okay, step back. Look at that by standards of approval, and so I went back through it again, and I really couldn't find any reason that it didn't meet each of the standards of approval, because there aren't other residents in that same condition, in that same circumstance within the city where there's nothing else on 4th Street that would exit onto 4th Street. My biggest concern is making sure that everything is built so that the homeowners don't have to redo anything as if 4th Street had to expand and that kind of stuff. But I think we have an amazing city staff and they'll handle that and they don't need me to micromanage it.
But still, like even, so when we're talking about special conditions that we're concerned about, I'm still, everything I listen to, I still feel like it is not a concern. The result of the actions of the applicant has done nothing wrong. They just bought a house and they've been put into a situation that is uncomfortable for them and they're being affected by the public. And like what Commissioner Gibson was talking about earlier, even though that property to the north is not part of the city, if and when that does get developed or annexed or not, that could very well be 6-foot walls all around that property because it's going to be the rear of their property. So this would just go in line with what is going to be potentially available in the future. And honestly, looking at the potential drawings of the wall that they're suggesting, it does look really good. It looks better than the ones that are across the street from them. We've got, one of the questions actually that I was thinking about is, can you pull up that picture again where it shows the frontage? Right there, is the wall going to come on this side of all the? It's just behind all of
That's
it.
in the right of way.
Yeah, so.
So it's going behind
Yeah,
those trees.
I feel like just don't understand why we would be concerned about it, even if there are potential findings in the future. I see no negative. I mean, so potentially if they wanted to do something in the future, then maybe the owner would have to pay for the wall to be removed for some future development.
If it's placed in a location that would be a future easement, that can be avoided based on if, you know, we did have the engineer go over this, and it was anticipated, and this is mentioned in the staff report, that there wouldn't be a need for additional right-of-way dedication, but that an easement adjacent to the right-of-way would need to be granted should it be triggered. And where that comes from is in our site plan standards in our code. There's a table. It says if you do this, construction of frontage improvements and dedication of easement is required. And that's what that's coming from. And so it is potentially going to happen in the future depending on what someone does with the property. So if they wanted to avoid that altogether, it would be a 10-foot easement adjacent to the right-of-way, and it could be located outside of the easement. That would be up to them. This condition will make sure that it's addressed either now or, because it could never happen, it just depends. It depends on future development. It depends on what triggers that based on our transportation plan and the needs of that corridor. So that's why that condition's there.
Do we allow driveways onto minor arterials for a single home, typically?
You wouldn't see that typically because our access management policy mentions that there's really not to be driveways. They would normally come off local streets. So if you had a subdivision, they would have a local street and access would be off that. But in this case, there's no alternative.
So that could go to any future development down the road that would probably, there would be backyards there, so, next to them. Okay. Vaughn, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. Should we take a vote?
Okay, Commissioner Bemis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibson,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Prickett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Taylor.
Yes.
We have a motion carried.
Motion passes. You have your
It will be
conditional use
beautiful.
permit, or your variance, I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
Do we have any reports? Donna?
Mixed use design standard, or mixed use MU1 and MU2 go to council on Tuesday for public hearing.
You guys don't have to stick around for our procedural stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You can if you want, but you don't have to.
You're welcome, thank you.
That's what we need to do.
Just talking about my wall.
Thanks. Thank you, appreciate
Too
it.
hot. On the other side of the road.
Go down the,
Go down.
We'd be good neighbors.
okay, build a
I
good
love
wall.
your- I
We
love,
got all those Christmas lights, grandsons did that.
yeah, that's beautiful. I love the multi-generational family. Thank you. It's a good example.
That's our first variance that we've dealt with, I think, since I've been on the board.
Since I've
We
been-
used to seem like we got a lot of them back a while ago, but yeah, that's the first one we've had in a while.
Isn't that fence that he's talking about yours? Yeah, sounds like, I know what we're
I believe the last variance was in August of 2021.
Really?
That would have come
Okay.
I can't remember
Yeah, I
that.
don't remember it either. COVID,
Where's yours?
that's why I don't remember.
Are you on the?
So the June 6th meeting might be a call-in meeting.
Short one.
We have a zone map amendment and a subdivision that we were trying to have come together.
For next meeting?
Are they for the same property?
They are, but the subdivision has some hiccups going on.
Little hair.
So if we can't figure out, if they decide, it makes sense for them to go together because of where they're located. And the MU1 and the MU2 code text changes. So it's they're kind of all work together. Anyway, we haven't gotten firm confirmation from the applicant if he wants to have them go separately or together. If he has them go together, we'll have a call-in meeting on the 6th. If he wants them to go separately, we'll have one and then the other. So I'm just not sure how that's going to work
One
yet.
on the 6th and then one on the 2 weeks later.
We're working through the process of the zone map amendment for the residential multifamily code. And so we're gonna bring a frequently asked questions flyer and then a notice to those
Affected person.
affected parcels to Tuesday's council meeting for the council to bless the verbiage in them, because I'm not gonna, it's not a sword I'm willing to die on. So, and get direction. So they wanted to have an open house or a town hall meeting ahead of time and sort of backlog backfeed the dates.
And that's for the residential multifamily.
It looks like that we'll do that the end of June-ish.
That town hall? Okay.
We're
For
just trying to-
affected parcel owners.
for the affected parcel owners. So, planning and zoning and city council most likely can't be at that town hall meeting because then you'll have a public hearing with the planning and zoning in July and a city council public hearing in August,
So that'll just
September.
You guys will be doing that, and that's it.
And so we're just trying to figure out how to get everybody to be able to have a ability to participate in the process.
Okay.
The town hall isn't a requirement, but it was suggested and we're following through with that. Noticing specifically to the property owners isn't required by Idaho code either, but we kind of sort of think that it probably is a good idea.
Best practices.
Yes.
Best practices.
But I just wanted to kind of keep you guys apprised as that loop goes. And
And if anybody asks you about it on the street, as this starts unfolding, of course, you can't speak to any particular parcel owner about what's to happen with their individual parcels. You can only say that, yes, the city's working very hard to get this residential multifamily rectified, and that they will have an opportunity at a town hall to express their concerns or wishes at that point, and they should participate at every level.
Can you print that out on a little card?
You could, at the very least, just say, you will be notified and you shall participate at every level.
And we're working on those trifolds, so we'll have those available.
And then you can just hand those out.
Pass those out as well, so that.
And you just said that we cannot participate in the town hall meetings?
No.
Okay.
Because you'll have public hearing coming to you on every
So
one
we
of
can't
these
come as
parcels.
just a citizen because we're on the, yeah, gotcha.
Well, if you're an affected parcel owner, we can have a private conversation, but if you're not, then,
Because we'll have one of those.
Because then we'd be biased or something.
Right.
Okay.
yeah,
No bias.
or ex parte communication, right?
But we'll try to keep you as apprised to the process as possible once it unfolds, so.
Okay.
All right, is that it for reports?
What if we don't know if we're affected? Can we talk to someone?
You'll get a notice in the mail.
You'll know, oh, you're affected.
Yeah, I have a concern that's, as a property owner, that I'd like to talk to somebody.
Come on in.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to kind of let you know, it's kind of we've got a couple of other subdivisions that'll coming down the pike, but they also haven't gotten all the kinks worked out of them either, so. Okay, anyway.
I think that's it. Should we be adjourned?
And then the first meeting in July is, I believe, right at 4th of July weekend, so we don't have that meeting. We only have the second meeting in
On a
July.
Monday.
So that
it's a
means
Monday.
your public hearing for the residential multifamily will happen at your one and only meeting in July.
So we are or are not having a meeting on the 6th and the 20th of June?
We are having a meeting on the 6th that just might be call-in.
Most likely calling.
Okay, what about the 20th?
Yeah, depending on this,
Oh, because they'll
Mixture
do
thing
both
going
of them
on
on the 20th. If they
Right.
split them up, we might have one on the 6th and one
potentially,
on the 20th.
that's the goal
Okay.
anyway.
What's the complication there? Why-
Good question. I can answer that. I'll be general, I guess.
Yeah.
The preliminary plat that was submitted originally has changed significantly, and that's been based off of feedback from engineering, public works, planning. And so we have a zone map amendment request that's been submitted for a portion of a property that's going to be subdivided, but we don't have a complete subdivision application. And there are some components of that that are still, that the applicant is still waiting on. And so in order to properly notice and move forward with the process, there are certain minimum things that we need to be able to make sure we're giving the public adequate notice, et cetera. So that is why there's a delay and why it may be pushed out. And the applicant acknowledged that even at the pre-development discussion, so it's not a surprise or a race against the clock. It's a matter of just making sure that everything's together and complete so that when we come to hearing, we have what we need to make the process flow.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? Meeting is adjourned.
Awesome. I will not be here on the 20th of June.
Okay.